Hey everybody, I'm Garry MacLean and you're watching Talent Talk. Thanks for tuning in. If you haven't done so already, please do go to the Talent Talk YouTube channel and subscribe today. As always, the support is appreciated. Another thing to let you know that this is now available, season 4 at least. We are looking to get previous seasons as well, but right now season 4 is available on multiple podcast mediums such as Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcast, just to name a few. If you'd like to find out exactly where you can watch it, check out the description details of this episode and other previous 4 episodes or season 4 episodes. There you go. Now, today we are chatting with a couple folks. There was a feature film that was filmed here in Alberta called Grotesque, um, locally homegrown by the writer, director, Brandon Ryan. Oh, he's going to kill me. Rhiness. He's going to correct me when I get back on. And Elizabeth, and you know what? I didn't even check her last name, but Elizabeth Chamberlain is her name, and she's the star of the show. So let's bring them on and have a little chat with them.
You got
Hello.
my last name right. You're good.
Rhiness.
Excellent. Rhiness, I knew that. Well, thanks for coming on, guys.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, and sorry it took so long because I know it was kind of back and forth there for a little bit. So yeah, Brandon, you and I talked. I'm trying to remember when we actually did chat before.
I was on the show while we were shooting.
Yes.
We took a break from shooting so I could go in one of the back rooms and do an interview. And I think I took the camera out and walked around set where we were filming, and everyone kind of waved.
I remember that.
So, yeah, we were like halfway done the movie at that point.
Yeah, I remember that as well. It was a fun one to do.
Yeah.
And so now here we are. The process is done. The film is done. It's out there for people to see. And I'm just kind of curious what the overall time frame you feel it took to begin with, from start to finish, the time you wrote it to now.
It was long. 2 years, probably more. Because I remember we were actually in pre-production on a different movie called One Night Drunk. It was supposed to be a follow-up to Hot Box, which is the last movie that Elizabeth and I did. And we'd kind of, just in the first few days of discussing that, when I finished the Grotesque script and I showed it to Julie Whalen, my co-producer, and she was like, "Oh my God, this is so awesome. Like, let's do this movie instead." And I was like, "Are you allowed to do that? Just, completely change gears?" And like, "All right, let's do this instead." So we just, did a complete 180, decided to go with Grotesque. So we pulled it all together and we filmed for one day, and then we had to shut down because of COVID. Just COVID got in the way, and then cast member got sick, so we had to postpone. And before we knew it, it was winter, and of course the movie takes place in summer, and we already shot one day. So it's like, well, great, now we have to wait till spring. So we had to wait till spring, and then all these other hardships came up, and we'd just do a few days here, a few days there, and we'd run out of money, get more money. Finally finished it, and there were even scenes that we were shooting. It was the same scene, but we were shooting 2 different angles of the same scene 1 year apart to the day, pretty much.
Wow.
So there's at least one part in the movie where we're cutting between 2 characters, and each side of the conversation's 1 year apart, just because of the way it turned out. So it was a long process, but it's finally done.
Awesome. Mike, I'm kind of curious though. You said you got like that 1 year time frame. How difficult was continuity, especially when it comes to people's appearances and hairstyles and things like that?
Well, since Elizabeth was the main character playing Mildred Moyer, as long as she looked the same, that was 90% of it. Most other people, we would try to shoot all their scenes at once, so we didn't have to bring them back. But the lovable Dr. Wash, played by Tom Antoni, he had to have that ridiculous mustache for a year and a half. Remember, every couple months he'd be like, any sign of a shooting date yet? And it's like, not yet. That's coming. We're just waiting on things. And so there were a few issues like that, but it surprisingly it worked well. There's a couple other parts too where for one reason or another we had to bring an actor back to do some extra shots for effects or whatever, and we put them in the same costume and do their hair and makeup as close as we can. And if you watch it kind of frame by frame, you could tell it's not quite right, but I don't think anyone's really going to notice it. It miraculously worked well.
Awesome. And part of the reason I'm asking is I have that experience in that one of the projects I was involved with probably took about 4 years to film. And it was a web series with about 9 episodes. And I was one of the recurring characters throughout those episodes. Well, of course, over the span of 4 years, my hairstyles changed a lot. And there was even some reshoots, if you will. And that was kind of the ongoing joke when we did the premiere at the Globe for the entire series, is that he's got a different look every scene. He's a different guy. Like, the great thing is, well, sort of the great thing was it was kind of a spy show, but I was just an analyst. So it would have worked if I was actually one of the spies. I was changing my look and changing appearance, but I was just an analyst looking weird every time. So yeah, I was kind of curious if you guys had similar scenarios, but it sounds like it was not too bad.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes like it really was what Brennan said. For me, I had to like make sure that my hair was the same length all the time and the same shade and whatever, because I do my own hair, so I had to always make sure it was the same length and always make sure it was the same color, and not to gain weight or to lose weight. That was a big thing too. I was just like, I got to make sure I'm exactly the same I was, so that doesn't look weird. But then sometimes we came up with like creative solutions to things. So like there's a scene in the movie, this is kind of like inside peek. There's a scene in the movie where I come out of a bar, and then the next scene is me putting my hair up out of the bar because my hair was a bit different, and we were like, we don't want to like waste time like trying to fix this. Just put your hair up, it'll be fine. And it's like, honestly, you would never notice. Like, you would never notice. But like, if we hadn't come up with that creative solution, you would have been like, what the heck is going on here? So completely different days, completely different locations, and yet it looks seamless. Yeah.
Excellent. Comes down to the editing too, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And Brandon, you edited it as well, did you not?
I sure did.
Yeah. You're like the one-man show, really.
Well, not quite. There's a lot of talented people that helped me make it.
For sure. But I mean, you definitely wore a lot of hats, right?
Yeah.
And by trade, if you will, you're more of a writer, right? You pump out a lot of scripts.
Yeah, I'm like writer, director, editor, producer, in that order.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
And for you, Elizabeth, like, I know acting is kind of your primary, but do you have other things that you kind of focus on as well outside?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I feel like in this industry, everybody always has lots of hats. Like, nobody's just like, I only do this one thing all of the time. It's a really good idea to have lots of different ins in this kind of industry. So for me, yeah, I'm an actress, but I also like, I help Brandon produce the films, and I teach acting. And I'm also a singer and a singer-songwriter. So I teach singing and I sing. And I write music and stuff like that. So I actually wrote the kind of like theme song for Grotesque. And I like did a little music video for that. So yeah, like it totally goes in and out. I do lots of stuff as well. Yeah. And I also made the t-shirt Brandon's wearing. I made all those graphics. Yeah, so I do graphic design as well and artistry in that sense.
Nice. Well, see, and I was going to ask, are you the triple threat where you have, can you dance as well?
Yeah.
But you're so you're like quadruple threaded.
Yeah, I'm octuple. No, but yes, I did take musical theater training. So yes, I'm a singer, actor, dancer. I choreograph and I teach as well. Yeah.
Nice. And do you do theater as well? Like,
yeah, I do. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you written for theater, by the way, Brandon? Or you do write mostly film?
I have never written for theater. I'm sure I could if I tried. I just haven't.
Okay. Yeah. Fair enough. So I'm kind of curious about, because you kind of mentioned a little bit with the budget. You gain money, you lose money, especially when it spans over 2 years. Was that a bit of a struggle throughout that 2 years?
I mean, it's always, especially in indie film, it's always a struggle. With this one, we like with Hotbox, the one we did before, we raised enough money to basically shoot the whole thing in one go. With Grotesque, we had just like a little bit of money that basically we raised from people, and not nearly enough to do the whole movie. And it actually was Julie, my co-producer, who said, like, instead of just waiting what might end up being years to raise all the money we need, we have enough to shoot for 2 days. Let's just shoot for 2 days and then keep going. And if it takes us 2 years to do, let's just start. And I'm really glad that we did that because, we only got the 1 day done before we had to postpone. But once we started doing it again, as soon as we were going, all of a sudden it brought us attention to get more money. And all of a sudden people, we tell everyone, yeah, we're shooting this movie. We just need more money. And people are like, well, I can kick in $1,000. I can kick in $1,000. And next thing you know, oh, we have enough to do 1 more day. So let's shoot 1 more day. And then it kept going. And everyone's like, well, now that we've come this far, we don't want to stop. So everyone's kind of asking around. And, next thing you know, we have enough to do another day. And people kind of, we'd kick in our own money. Other people would put in money. And next thing you know, we had the whole movie done. Whereas if we hadn't have done that and we just were kind of sitting around waiting to do this project that only existed as a script, people wouldn't have been as excited about it. But as soon as they start seeing the social media posts, they see Elizabeth in costume, they see like little clips from it, all of a sudden it becomes real. And all of a sudden people have a stake in getting this made because, who wants to be part of a movie that gets half made and then dies, right?
Yeah.
So we eventually raised enough to shoot it. And then, of course, by the time we finished production, we were out of money again. So we did a crowdfunding campaign. I think we raised about $6,000 to finish post-production. And then, it's done. And we're out of money again. It'd be nice to have some for advertising and marketing, but, it's always a struggle. But I'm glad we did it like that. And I'm so, just happy that people were willing to help out like that. That people are just very generous in this community because, we're not Los Angeles, we're not Vancouver, where film's a big business. Here, it's something that people are passionate about and they just have a lot of fun doing. So people are really willing to just, put in that extra effort and go the extra mile to help us get made. And I'm just extremely generous of them.
Yeah, honestly, that's something that I really love about Grotesque. Lots of films, people sit around and they talk about them and they never get made, to be honest. The fact that we just went ahead and we're like, we don't have everything yet. We don't have all of the plans. We don't know how this is going to happen, but we know that we have the passion to do it. We know that we have the drive to do it. And we know that we have, a really good story to tell. And we just sat down and we just actually did it. And then, Brandon said people from the community came and helped. That would have never been possible if people didn't follow that momentum and get on the train and go, yeah. And that's something that is so unique about Grotesque that not a lot of films are. A lot of film companies are like, this is our thing. And, it's we're going to put it in this box and that's that. But Grotesque, somebody was like, hey, maybe I want to get involved. And Brand is like, yeah, get on here. Let's go. And we have honestly, everybody in Edmonton knows about it. Because of that, everybody knows somebody that was a part of it or has a friend or somebody who joined in. And that's why it was so successful. It is so successful is because everybody feels like there's a piece of them in it,
Yeah, I totally. And I was really kind of surprised to hear about the success you had with the GoFund. Was it GoFundMe or crowdfunding or
Indiegogo? Yeah.
Oh, Indiegogo. Yeah. Okay. Because I know I've tried that with very little success, but I also think a lot of the people that do have success on that, and I don't know if this is your experience or not, but it does seem to follow the trend of the buildup, right? Before you actually ask for that money, right? So like you said, you were always doing something with it, so people were aware of it when it came time for you to actually ask for that money for the post, right? So I think that really helped your case.
Definitely. Like by the time we did the crowdfunding campaign, we already had a trailer because we'd already shot the movie.
Yeah.
So we had a ton of content ready to go. Elizabeth had the costume so she could pitch the movie herself in costume. Whereas if we only had a script, it's just not as exciting, right? We had so much done. And I think once people see that, because there's always the risk in crowdfunding, what if I give these people money and they never finish it, they just take my money. Whereas we were so close to the end and we had a track record of doing other movies. So we'd proven we could get movies done and we had this movie in the can. So it was not very hard to convince people just to chip in a little bit more to help us finish. And I'm sure by the time it comes to do Grotesque 2 or whatever projects we do in the future, it's just going to be a little bit easier just because we've done it before and people know they can trust us and we turn out a product that's very good. They kind of know what they're in for. when I first started, it was just so hard just to get anything, even just to get people to help out, was just difficult because I wasn't known. People hadn't seen what I could do. But now that we have this team that's been fairly consistent over the last few movies, it's like, oh, these guys are doing another one. That's worth investing a bit of money in just to see it finished.
Yeah. And that is, like you mentioned earlier as well, that is kind of the strength of this community once they kind of, especially for yourself, once you kind of get in your foothold in there, there's no short supply of people willing to throw in their support. And that's the one thing I really do like about Alberta and the film industry within Alberta is that generosity within the community. I really don't think that's as prevalent in a lot of other communities. I don't know, that's my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong, but
No, I totally agree. I completely agree. Yeah.
Yeah. No. So kudos for you guys getting it done. Like how many minutes is the film total?
Like 80 minutes roughly.
Right? Like
It's fairly short.
That's an achievement, man. That doesn't happen very often for indie films here in Alberta. Shorts, no problem. Ton of them out there. But features doesn't happen very often. So yeah, kudos to you and the entire group for that. Now, because you've been able to kind of build up a little bit of a following as well, do you feel that's kind of helped with the release of it now, I guess, in terms of people wanting to watch it, people, being able to get it on Tubi like we were talking about just before the show? Do you think that kind of helped?
You want to take that one, Elizabeth?
I think it definitely did help personally. I think that everybody's excited to share something that they made, so I see like constantly on social media, people are sharing the Tubi link and other ways. Because they're like, I made this, please like this. And they're like in one scene, or they were behind the scenes or something like that. But they're like, I was a part of this, So I've definitely seen lots of that. And I've seen people cross talk on platforms as well, where like they'll just get like a comment stream going and they're just like discussing it back and forth. I'm like, oh, that's really cool. And lots of good like positive reviews. And passionate reviews. Yeah, I think so.
And did you guys have kind of a red carpet premiere for it?
We did. We had no red carpet, but we had a premiere at.
Dang, we should have had a red carpet.
Yeah, we had a premiere at the Garneau in Edmonton. Went extremely well. There a minor error. They kind of screwed up, and they basically lost the newest version of the film. Of course, everyone's sitting in the theater ready to go, and they're like, "We don't have it," and so we ended up having to run a version that we tested a week or two earlier at the theater. It was like 95% done. So I don't think the average person could tell the difference, but there was some missing effects and stuff.
I knew in the first 10 seconds, I was like, something's wrong.
But luckily, the theater, they were awesome about it, and they did another. They allowed us to have a second show a few weeks later. So we basically had two premieres, and they were both extremely well attended, and everyone loved it. And a whole lot of people from the first one came back for to watch the second one, which wouldn't have happened if the movie was boring or bad in any way. So obviously, the fact that people were jumping just to watch it again. It was just, there was definitely like an electricity in the air, just that feeling like everyone's having such good vibes. And it was just such a wonderful time.
Yeah, it was actually very akin to like live theater. Like people were hooting and hollering in the audience and applauding, and like some gory effect would happen and everyone would go ooh. It was like really, really fun. Actually, it was just like a blast just to be in that audience and like react with everybody. It was great.
And that was actually going to be my next question anyway, is the crowd reaction. Like, did you guys get the reactions you were looking for? Obviously you did. So.
Yeah, it was. You never know what to expect, especially with a movie like this, where it's very kind of disturbing and gory, but it's also hilarious and kind of lighthearted at the same time.
Yeah.
So it's hard to know what audience to play to. I mean, if you're in there for a romantic comedy, you're going to be horrified by what you see. But if you're in there for, hardcore violence, you're going to be horrified by all the, sweetness to it. So we kind of had this interesting mix of things, but I think almost every single joke hit got a laugh. Every single gory bit. The effects, we had an extremely limited budget. And some of the effects, like we did the best of what we had in the short amount of time we had, but they were kind of questionable at times. We had to edit around, but almost everyone hit. We got a whole lot of disgusted reactions, and we even had one person had to leave the theater because they were just too horrified.
Really?
Yeah. It was
Oh, that's
boyfriend of one of the actors in it. But
that's when you know you did it right.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And so, Elizabeth, were you dressed in as
Mildred.
Oh my goodness. Yes, Mildred, thank you. Were you dressed up as Mildred? I know, right? It's like right there.
Yeah, so I showed up dressed in like a red dress. I don't know. I was like, ooh, fancy opening night. But then right before the end, this was Brandon's idea, by the way. I can't take credit for it. Right before the end, I sneak out and I change it to Mildred garb. And then when people exit the theater, I was standing there in Mildred stuff, and everybody was like, oh, so then everybody came and took photos with me, and I signed autographs as Mildred Moyer. I didn't sign them as Elizabeth. Yeah, it was just like really cool to do that. And a lot of people were just like, whoa, like I just saw you. What the heck? Like didn't even see me leave the theater. I think we have this kind of ongoing thing where like Mildred just like appears like magically. And that was really fun to play with. Yeah. And the audience really liked that. They thought that was really cool. Although there was one audience member that left kind of at the similar time that I did and like saw me in the bathroom. And I was like, I was like, don't tell anyone. And she was like, okay. And then I was like, oh my gosh. So for her, it wasn't a surprise, but for everybody else.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was really fun.
I love those kind of scenarios. I was in a play, oh, man, this was so long ago, Night of the Living Dead. And we kind of did something similar. Like I was just one of the zombies. I wasn't part of the main cast, but the zombie was actually one of the funnest parts to play. Because of course we did a little zombie thing pre-show, scaring guests as they would come into the theater for the show, and then we actually had plants, including myself, in the audience. And so then, as the show went on, some of us would come alive out of the audience, and
oh, cool.
And then we actually had totally right,
yeah.
And people would do their little jump scare. We had one point where it was great because we had people under the bleachers as well. And so there's one scene where one of our zombies grabbed somebody's ankle from underneath and they kicked a water bottle onto the stage. So there's this water bottle rolling onto the stage in the middle of the scene. It was great. I love those kind of things.
Yeah, that sounds fun.
And it worked well for us too because like Mildred is such a recognizable character. Just between the red hair and the dress and the mask, she's very iconic. I like to say. So naturally people want to have their picture taken, and when of course those get shared on social media, it just helps draw attention to the movie. And I think part of it, part of the appeal is just the poster. When you look at that poster, you can kind of see what kind of movie it is. It's someone holding a knife. It's the kind of people that like that movie are going to watch it just based on seeing that poster as they're flicking through whatever streaming service they're on.
Yeah.
So I think just having an iconic killer like that works very well, and I'm hoping one day that we'll be up there along with Michael Myers and Freddy Krueger, Jason Voorhees, Mildred Moyer will be one of the most respected killers.
I think it's possible.
And how do you feel about being stepping into those kind of shoes?
Me? Oh, yeah. Like I feel great. That feels awesome. I have no problem with that at all. I think it's very possible that Mildred Moyer could be. I mean, a lot of the serial killers, just the way it happens, are male. I feel like that it gives a special draw that she's a female. It's not like it's the first time that it's happened, but it's definitely like iconic, and I think a lot of people really like that. They kind of go, she looks so cute. How can she do that? And I'm like, I know, right? Like that's kind of how Brandon, I think anyway, wrote it. Like, like pretty but deadly, kind of that kind of thing.
It really is what makes Mildred unique is that I think a lot of actors or just writers, they would have made that character very hard edged, right? Just try to make her like she go toe to toe with Michael Myers, or we went the opposite way. And she's just so incredibly nice and sweet, but has the absolute most insane, brutal side to her. But you still can't help but love her. And people even kind of said that it's like I'm not sure if I'm supposed to cheer for her because I kind of did, but she's doing horrible things. But yeah, she just has like this sweetness to her, and this kind of just like she's so naive almost that yeah, you just can't help. I think even in the little pitch for her, we call her a lovable psychopath, which I think describes her very well.
Yeah. Yeah, there were even moments in the theater where people were kind of going like, "Yes," when I would murder somebody, and I'm like, like, are we watching the same film here? And people would like clap a little bit and then be like, "Oh, maybe I shouldn't be clapping." And yeah, it's a good one. Yeah.
Well, that definitely makes it, a little bit more unique. And like you said, I mean, the serial killer scenario is usually, like you said, so male dominated that it is kind of refreshing every once in a while to have that female in that kind of role. Refreshing, I don't know, maybe that's not the right word, but it is. It's a nice change, right? And especially like you said, the way you wrote it with it for having that sweetness to her, you don't see that in any bad guy kind of role. So that's a nice unique take on that. And how much of you was in your character?
I guess that's hard to say. I would say very little personally. Like I don't plan on murdering anyone.
So you didn't go method for this one.
No, but at the same time, Brandon, because we've worked so much together, Brandon knows me really well. He does a really good job of writing things in my voice. Like a lot of times I'll get a script and I'm like, oh, this is going to be a hard sentence. Like I got to say this 1,000 times before I'm going to get it right or whatever. Or, oh, this is something I would never say, but I'll do it. But Brandon like writes things like they're from my mouth. Like I read this and I go, yeah, I know exactly how that's supposed to be read. And that sounds like something I would say. And it'll be very easy. So for that, in that extent, it's very much like me. It was very easy to say all of the things that I need to say. The script was very simple for me. But as for actual characteristics, I don't know. She's quite psychotic. she's not a lot like me. She's very bold and sweet and all of those things. And I'm just kind of, I'm just me. She's way cooler than I'll ever be.
And I'm assuming you wrote that character that way on purpose, Brandon.
Yeah, like her, like Mildred's character and her nemesis boss at work, Blanche, played by Julie Whalen, my co-producer. They were the two that, as I was writing it, I was definitely sure they were going to play those parts, and that's probably why they come across as just having such the perfect rivalry, because I wrote it directly knowing how every word would sound as it came out. All the other roles we kind of cast at some point, and the people I'd imagine weren't necessarily the one that ended up playing the role. But yeah, Julie and Elizabeth were the ones, and you'll see when you watch it that it's just, yeah, their characters just kind of come through in a different way. I mean, there's other characters like Dr. Wash that are just such great characters, but Julie and Elizabeth I wrote them specifically with them in mind.
And did you, just out of curiosity, like, did you, once you finished the actual writing of it, the entire script, did you have like a table read for those other characters just to have a listen to it, or?
I don't think we do. I used to do table reads all the time, but with Grotesque, we had such a huge cast. I think there was like 80 speaking roles in it or something.
Yeah.
And a lot of it was just Mildred. There was a few kind of main characters throughout, but a lot of it was people were in there for one scene, they get killed. One scene, get killed. So having a table read wouldn't necessarily help as much as it would when there's a smaller cast. I think we had the same issue with Hotbox. We didn't do a table read for that one either, just because the nature of the script didn't really call for it. But I do kind of miss doing them. But yeah, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure we never did one for Grotesque.
No, I think you're right. Yeah.
Okay. And you kind of mentioned earlier Grotesque 2. Is that something you've already started writing, or?
Yeah. It's Julie and I got together. I'd already kind of started planning it, but Julie and I got together a week or two ago to kind of really nail down some of the finer points of it, and it's coming together. I'm probably maybe a quarter of the way done writing it. I got a ton of other things. I'm shooting another movie now and stuff, so I'm very, very busy, but I'm slowly plugging away at it, and with any luck, and again, trying to raise the money, but we want to shoot next spring/summer, and we're hoping that in a perfect world we'll make enough money just from streaming and selling DVDs of Grotesque to fund part 2. It's probably going to come down to we'll still have to do crowdfunding. We'll still have to just hit people up and basically fight for every penny to get it made. But things are already in the works, and it's going to be a wild one. It's going to be fun.
And do you feel, because like you said, that's always the tough part, is the funding of it. And do you feel that, because how long has it actually been released? I guess I should ask that first right now.
Well, I mean, I think it was the premiere would have been was July 31st, I think. And it was probably, I'll say, a month or two after that it, the release, it wasn't like a dead on release date because, at some point I made DVDs, started selling them, and, got picked up by different streamers at different points. Like Tubi, it's only been up a week. It's been on Amazon in the US and UK for like 2 months. But people in Canada, it's been on Plex, so people in Canada could watch it for maybe a month and a half. So I'd say a couple months, basically.
Okay. Again, out of curiosity, with the Amazon UK, have you seen anything from that side of it yet? Anybody over the pond watching it?
There's been, people have been watching it. We've been making a little bit of money at it. Just not a lot. It might just take a while to build up because obviously our main fan base is here in Canada. So on Tubi, we're doing actually very well. I've been selling a lot of DVDs. I was surprised at how many we're selling, even to complete strangers. Like I sold 1 this week to the UK, sold 2 to Australia this week. And, selling a lot of just people, they must have seen my Facebook post somehow and just hit me up for one. And so there is a demand for it. But of course, like every indie movie, we run into the problem that we're one of 1,000 other movies. And how do you get people to pick yours over other? There's so many choices on a streaming service, right? You could scroll through hundreds of them. And of course, big Marvel movies, any big studio movie is going to get like 99% of people's attention. And we're kind of left fighting for the leftover scraps almost. So it's just hard to get people to notice yours. So I'm very, thankful for every single person that watches it because, it's just every view gets us, a little bit more money, and it gets a little higher in the algorithm. So it gets shared around more, and even people that give it negative reviews, it still works in our favor because it gets shared around. And there's a lot of people that will watch a movie based on a negative review. So I don't think it has a negative effect compared to a positive review. As long as people are watching it and talking about it, it's going to circulate more and more. And it's like, I was even a bit surprised at how much money we're kind of making of this one. It's not a lot to even pay back what we put into it. But if you give it a year or two, it's like, and it keeps up, all of a sudden we might be profitable. And then it would be easier to fund the next one because somehow, we've worked with some shady distributors before, and we've somehow gotten screwed out of any share of the money. So for this one, I was like, you know what? Like, no one's touching this. Like, we're going to do this ourselves. Like, I'll print the DVDs in my apartment and sell them myself and take them to the post office. Like, we'll put it up, release it through Film Hub. So we'll get on streaming services. And the money goes directly into the Higher Universe bank account that can go towards further projects that we're doing. So no one else is sticking their hands in the pot and taking any of our money. So I think it's a much better way to do it because now we control our own movie and we don't have to answer to anybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And just out of curiosity, what's your platform for actually selling the DVDs?
Right now, there's not really a platform. I've just been posting it online, and people either e-transfer me or go through PayPal. Send me the $20, and then I put it in an envelope and mail it off.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. And for you, Elizabeth, are you still like heavy into the promotion side of it, or yourself, or?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm heavy into it. I'm also heavy into Grotesque 2. I'm into Grotesque 2 and 3 and 4 and however many we want to make.
I need you to sign something on that because
Brandon's like, I have this on tape now.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, no, honestly, I really love Grotesque. I think it's very like addicting, and I don't see it slowing down anytime soon.
Yeah, and it's funny too because overall I'd say the majority of reviews we've had are very positive, but we're starting to get negative ones, which I knew would happen because it's just the way the movie is. It's a love-hate kind of movie, and there's going to be a lot of people that are going to hate it for a lot of reasons. There's going to be a lot of people that love it. And I remember some filmmaker, fairly high-level filmmaker, I can't remember who it was, he said the last thing you want is a bunch of 5 out of 10 star reviews, because that means you're just kind of boring. You're right in the middle and you're just plain. He's like, you want to get a bunch of 10s and a bunch of 1s. He's like, you want people to love it and you want people to hate it, and you want them both to be very passionate about loving it or hating it, because then you've made something substantial, something that people could have a debate over. And that's kind of where we're at now. If you look at our reviews, we got a whole lot of 1s and a whole lot of 10s. Overall, they're mostly geared towards the more positive ones, but I thought a lot more people would hate it just because, especially the ending, it kind of gets super cheesy, which is very rare for a hardcore horror movie. And people go in thinking one thing and they're going to get another. But the people that love it, even Elizabeth was sharing something she read on Instagram yesterday, and it's like, yeah, there's some people that just absolutely love it.
Yeah, it was out of nowhere. So there's this, I don't even remember who it was, but followed me, liked all of my posts. I have a lot of posts, liked all of my posts. And I was like, okay, what is this? And then I go look and he made a review on Grotesque and was super positive. And that kind of stuff is happening all the time. All the time people are reaching out to me being like, hey, I don't know you, but I saw you in Grotesque and it was amazing. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. Initially it was just people that I knew. It was just, friends or people that were a part of the film, or friends of people that were a part of the film. But now slowly it's just becoming just random people reaching out to me and being like, this was awesome. Thank you so much for making this. And I'm like, oh, that's really cool. You're welcome. Yeah. So that's,
and now that we hit, now that we're on Tubi seems to be we're getting way more views.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's where it starts to come in, and people are like, yeah, I love every second of this movie and everything. I think it's going to definitely have its own fan base, which will make it a lot easier when it comes time for part 2. Just to sell the we don't have to sell the concept this time because it's kind of been done. Now it's just a follow up, and I would love to do. I love all the Friday the 13th movies and all the Halloween movies, just because there's multiple installments. You could watch 13 different movies, and I would love that for Mildred, just to, I'll do the first 6 or 7, and eventually, I'll get too big for them, and I'll, sell to someone else, and I'll just get royalties off it, and someone else will direct, and they'll butcher it, and then I'll come back 10 years later to fix it. And, we'll just have a big adventure like that. I mean, that's far in the future. Right now, we got to focus, one thing at a time.
It'll be the Texas Chainsaw Massacre kind of scenario where, people are just redoing it because they loved it so much. And like you said, you'll come in 6 years later and go, yeah, you guys just ruined all this. I didn't do this. That'd be awesome, actually. So is there other mediums that you're hoping that this will get onto, or are you kind of satisfied right now as to where it's sitting?
I'm as satisfied as I can be at this point. This is our first time going through Film Hub. We've had other distributors that have put a movie out, and I don't know, we lost contact with them, and they, kind of treated us unfairly, I think. And so I don't even really know where to find those movies. This is the first one where I have more control over it. So Film Hub basically pitches it to every streamer possible, the ones that actually pay money. And it's up to each streamer whether or not they want your movie. So every couple of days, it's we pop up on a new one. And then it's a slow process because, we've been picked up by some streamers, but sometimes it takes up to a couple months before we even go live. So there's some that we're just sitting and waiting. And I started adding I'm Haunted, which was the other movie that I wrote and directed that Elizabeth starred in, a found footage horror film. It's been released too, and it's been picked up by several streamers, but just hasn't actually been gone live yet. So we're still waiting, and then we're going to be adding more titles. We're going to add our entire back catalog of short films. So they'll be available for streaming too, because it's so much easier to. It seems like there's more potential to make money than there is just through YouTube, where we released them before. So that'll hopefully just get us more money coming in, which will go to directly finance the next project. And then as we keep going, making 1 or 2 of these a year would be great. we'll just keep adding them, and then more and more revenue coming in, which could go on making bigger projects. So that's kind of the goal. But yeah, right now I'm fairly happy that the movie is at least out there. We're in control of it, and people are loving it.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, and people are watching, right? Which is the key.
Yeah.
That's what we all want as filmmakers.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. I know I had another question, but this is my edit cut here because I'm trying to think of what my next question was. You know what? The one thing we haven't actually done, I know you and I, Brandon, might have talked a little bit on it when you were on the show before, but from Elizabeth's point of view, let's hear about, because I don't think we've actually talked about the film itself and who you really are in, like, what do you do? Like, why are you killing these people?
So Mildred, she's like very misunderstood and very mistreated. So, she, has a giant nose, which I can understand. I have a story about that later. She has a giant nose, and people throughout her whole life have just been making fun of her and putting her down and mistreating her, and she's just tired of it. She just at one point kind of is just really, really tired of it. And her roommate says, "Hey, I know this plastic surgeon. You should really get a surgery done." And she goes, "I don't know if I want to do that or not." But she finally decides that she wants to. She goes through it, and the surgery gets botched. So she ends up with no nose, a hole in her face, and that finally just makes her snap. She just goes, "I can't do anything right. I can't get a proper nose. I can't have, all of these thoughts are going through her head." And so she decides to go back, and anybody who's ever wronged her in her life, she decides to brutally murder. And so she comes up, she doesn't have like a specific way that she murders everybody. She doesn't have anything like that, but she is very creative, and anything that's around her is what she ends up picking to use on her victims. And so the kills get really, really creative throughout the film process and really nasty. And even though I was there for all of the practical effects that were done, even when I watch it back, I go, ooh, because they're really, I don't know how Brandon comes up with these sometimes. But yeah, and then in the end she finds love, and it's all happy. What the kind of love is, you'll have to watch to find out. But yeah, that's the film.
Yeah. Awesome. And so, yeah, to tie into that question that she just asked, where does that all come from?
Where does
I don't know.
Sorry, to Brandon for the actual
sorry.
kills.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Originally, I have this list of I think it's in probably 5,000 or 7,000 just like movie concepts that I've been adding to for years. So I think usually every day I'll think of a few more and just keep adding to this list. And every time it comes time to do a new script, I'll be like, "Oh, go consult the list," and I'll just kind of scroll through until something jumps out at me. And I had one on there called Grotesque. And originally it was going to be about, because I thought of it before I met Julie or Elizabeth or anyone that I worked with. It was originally going to be about this older woman who was, starting to age and worried that she wasn't pretty anymore. And she was kind of jealous of all these younger pretty women. So she went to get plastic surgery. It got botched, made her ugly. So she went around, no mask, just went around looking disfigured and killing young models, basically. That was originally going to be the premise. But by the time it came time to write the new script, I knew who Elizabeth was. And I was like, oh, maybe Elizabeth could play it. But then, we had to change the story a bit. And then I came up with, oh, what if she just has a big nose or something and tries to get plastic surgery and that gets botched? And then originally it was going to be 100% serious. It was going to be a serious slasher movie. And just the way it's happened with other scripts where I try to make it serious and it just ends up being funny
all the time.
And then
every time.
And then of course people love it. They're just like, "Oh, this is hilarious." And it's like, well, it's not really supposed to be hilarious, but and then that's just what we end up going with. So as for where it came from, it's just something that came to me. I love slasher movies, and this is just kind of my own take on it.
Yeah, exactly. So two things. So the other question I still have though is when it comes to the actual types of kills that happen. Where do you conjure those ideas of how people are going to die is one thing. The second thing is that, yes, I agree with, because even when I was telling my buddy at work today about the film, um, when I just told him the premise, he's like, "Yeah, that sounds awesome," but he also had that sense of there's a bit of, um, I don't want to say comedy to it, but campiness, maybe. Is that a better
Oh
term?
yeah,
Maybe.
yeah, it's super campy. That's what we're going for.
Right. So, and there is something to that, especially with horror films. People love the campiness of horror. I
Mhm,
know I do as well. Like I love
mhm.
watching campy horrors. Um, so there's definitely something to that, and so as much as you want to create that straight horror, I think you need to keep to the campiness a little bit.
Yeah, there's one that we're planning, hopefully do the next few years called On the Hour, um, that is more straight horror. That would probably be the first one. I've done some shorts that were more straight horror, but doing a feature that's not campy. So that'll be my first, foray into that. But yeah, I do love the Evil Dead kind of thing where it's like it's gory and serious, but it's funny at the same time.
Yeah.
I do like that, and yeah, I guess for the kills, it just at some point when I was writing it, usually it's like one of the first things I do before I even come up with the characters because it's the funnest thing. It's just like I'll make a list of like 15 possible kills, and I'll try to make them as original as I can, and then I'll narrow it down a little bit. With Grotesque, we ended up needing like I've actually never counted. I wonder if anyone's done that, counted the number of kills in it, but we had all the main ones, and then we decided to add a few more just because the movie didn't seem like it'd be long enough. So we added a few more, and then we decided to add a montage of kills where we had a whole bunch of kills while the song was playing. So at that point, it's like, oh, we got to come up with another 12. So by that point, and of course, we had other people, kind of throwing ideas into the pot and everything, and so we tried to make them original. And of course, we ran into the problem now for part two. It's like, oh, how do we think of more? We've used every idea we have, and there's actually the movie now horror show that we just started shooting this past weekend. One of the kills I wanted to do in there, when Julie found out about it, she's like, no. We agreed we're gonna do that one for Grotesque 2. It's like, so it's like crap. It's like, okay, so we can't do that anymore, but we already started building the effect for it. So like, okay, well, we got to do something similar but use a different weapon. And so imagine eventually, I don't think we'll ever run out of ideas. I'm sure by the time we come to part 3, 4, 5, we'll think of something else. And I mean, how many people did Jason kill with a machete? And it's still entertaining. Yeah. So we could recycle ideas if we want. And there's always fun ways to do it. And our makeup artist Jamie Clark is just a godsend when it comes to doing that stuff. She was actually right out of school, if I'm not mistaken. I think she had to miss her final exam in school to come work on our project.
Really?
Yeah, we had to work something out because her teacher, they let her do it later or early or something because she was working on this movie. So we were the first movie that she was on, and she's gone on to do a bunch of other films too. And but yeah, she was great at just like, how do we figure out how to do these effects? And we don't have a lot of money, and we don't have we can't hire the top Hollywood guys who've done everything. We're just down to like, how do you sever someone's head? How do you crush a skull? How do you do all this stuff? And let's just do it the best we can. And I think part of the charm is that it doesn't look super real. If it had been CGI, I think people would have just hated it. I think they just love the effort. Like I say, a bad practical effect is better than a good CGI effect. Like watching a slasher movie and it looks so polished and expensive, and it's like people don't want that. People don't really care about the realism. They'd rather have the old school early 80s where it's almost more like cringe inducing. It's almost grosser when it doesn't look real, but it is real. It's
Totally.
Just, yeah. So I think people like it for that that reason. And there's only one little bit that was CGI in Grotesque where someone gets their throat slit and you see some blood spray out. That was like not even 1 second of screen time. I'm pretty sure is the only. I guess the head chopping was partially a CGI effect, but we actually had a fake head too. So So we really put the effort and time into trying to do our best and making some awesome kill effects.
Yeah, I agree. Especially if you're going to do a horror film, like sci-fi has or CGI has its place in like some sci-fi or the superhero movies, but horrors, yeah, it's just so much better with the real props, the stuff you can touch and handle, and that kind of deal. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Um, oh, and I had a question there, and then it went away. I think it was to do with the makeup. Oh, getting old. Um, all right. It'll maybe come back later. I don't know. Oh, actually, you know what? We're climbing up to this 1 hour mark here. So maybe what I'll do is I'll start to wrap it up a little bit. But there are a couple other kind of fun questions, hopefully, that I wouldn't mind asking. For example, what, and this is for each of you independently, what was your most memorable moment on set? And then what's your most memorable moment off set, like at one of the premieres or something?
Ooh, that's a hard one. One kind of memory I have is when we were trying to do. I won't ruin the movie, but there's a beheading scene, and everything went wrong. It was just absolutely not working. We had a fake head with a wig on it, and the wig wouldn't stay attached to the head, and it just wouldn't fly properly. It just it was complete disaster. And we eventually had to give up, and it sucked because the whole point of this kill, I mean, we could technically cut around it and just show Mildred swing the axe and then cut right there, but that's a total cop out, right? And we were running out of time, and it's like, whatever, like it's, but it's not going to work. And so I was just kind of disappointed that we could pull it off. But lo and behold, James Hastings, our director of photography, worked some magic and kind of did a composite shot between two different shots and made it work, and it looked even better than I was expecting it to work.
Nice.
So that just kind of made me realize that when you have a good team and you just put some effort in, like no matter what we decide to do, if we put enough effort in, we could figure out how to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. The one thing I do want to mention about that is it is amazing what you can do, especially if you've got a great cinematographer like obviously you had as well. Is depending on what you're doing, and I also find that showing everything isn't always the best way. Like there's a little bit of that element of letting the mind visualize it itself that makes it even that little bit better. So it might have worked out even better that way for you. I don't know, but I sometimes think that's the best way.
Yeah.
Sometimes just letting that imagination run and finish it off. So that was on set, right? I don't know if you have one for offset.
I'll let Elizabeth tell her on set one while I try to think of the offset one.
I kind of have two. Is that okay if I say two?
Absolutely.
Okay, so there's a moment where Mildred is like being sprayed with a lot of blood. I don't wanna give away what's going on, but she's being sprayed with a lot of blood. And so Jamie Clark, our makeup artist, has this huge like whatever container of blood with like a pump in it, and then like it's like sprays on me. There's a spray nozzle. We run out of fake blood on set, and so we send somebody to go get more fake blood, but we don't want to like stop filming on set. So what we do is we add like paint, we add like water and literal paint. So I'm being sprayed with this like paint water solution, and she's just going to town on this little pump, and I'm just like acting and trying not to drown in this fake blood. So that was one of them. That was really fun. And then I ended up laughing at one point because it was just so bizarre. I was like, I can't see anything. It's in my eyes. I like everything's just paint colored, like red. And I feel like I'm drowning, but it's really fun. And so I start laughing, and Julie watches back the tape and she goes, I really like that laughter. It looks like maniacal. Like it looks like you're losing your mind. And so she's like, let's keep it. And I was like, okay. Like I actually was just like, I'm dying, but it was really, really fun. So that
made it to the final movie.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, it absolutely did.
Awesome.
It was great. And my other one, this is the story that I said I had earlier. So I wear the fake nose and we change locations, right? So I don't take off the fake nose during location changes. So I'm driving from one of our locations to the other location, and I'm driving on like a freeway of some sort in Edmonton. And kid you not, cars after cars after cars pull up beside me, roll down their window, they're pointing, they're laughing, or they're taking videos of me because they think it's so bizarre that I have this giant nose on. And that's when I was kind of like, I can kind of understand Mildred. Like, for me, I know that I take this nose off at the end of the night and I have a cute little button nose and I'm fine. But for Mildred, like, if that was her whole life for all 20, 25 years, like, that would be a lot. That would be a lot. But I just thought it was hilarious. And then I arrive at the salon for one scene, and same thing. They're all like looking out the window, being like, "Ha ha!" And yeah, so that's really fun. That's a good memory in my brain as well.
Yeah, you gotta like those ones where you can actually play into it a little bit for
Oh yeah,
people that are around, right? Yeah,
absolutely, yeah.
I hope those people knew it was fake. Otherwise, there's a lot of jerks in Edmonton. If you
I
thought that
don't
was
know, like,
real, they're just humiliating you.
it wasn't around Halloween, and the nose looked pretty convincing. I don't know.
So for Offset, between the two screenings, there was a lot of good moments, but I think like anytime, the same thing happened with Hotbox. Anytime like you're in the theater, people have seen the movie that worked on it. Like Elizabeth had seen it before, Julie, like kind of the main people had seen cuts of the movie as it was being put together, but the general public hadn't. And of course, we've been hyping this movie to everyone for 2 years. It would have been absolutely humiliating to have it bomb and everyone hates it, right? And there's always just, same thing with Hotbox. Anything that is kind of a comedy is like, are people going to laugh? Because, I think it's funny, but people's senses of humor are different. And there's nothing worse than telling a joke and then no one laughs. And then you're like, oh my God. So yeah. It's like that in front of, hundreds of people. And it's like, what if no one laughs this entire movie? And that's always in the back of my mind. It's like, so as soon as it happens, and then people laugh at the first joke, and they laugh at the second joke, and they laugh, and then the first kill, they're like, oh my God. And it's like, yes. And then as soon as that happens, you're kind of like, okay, now I'm good. At least I know we're on the same level. And then it becomes interesting to see, like, I wonder if they're going to laugh at this part. And it's like sometimes they laugh at parts that I didn't even mean to be funny. And sometimes people don't really laugh as much at parts I thought were funny. And, some of the kills got a laugh reaction. Some got a gross reaction. So it's just kind of interesting to see, like, what are people going to think of this? This effect didn't work as well. And people are, there's the part where the waitress gets beaten to death with a crowbar or tire iron or something. And I remember before we even see the actual effect, you just see Mildred pounding what is in real life, just the ground. There's nothing there. And everyone's like, oh, like they're all grossed out just by the sound. And I was like, what we haven't even shown it yet. And and of course, like, 2 seconds later, you see the actual, smashed head. And then you get an even worse. Oh my God.
Right. Yeah.
So it's good to see that. And it's such a good feeling because not only for me, but just everyone that worked on it. It's like we had to sit there trying to get these effects to work, and it took a long time. We had to do multiple takes. We had issues with battery power. We had issues with lighting. Just all these things that we had to struggle through and work so hard to get done over the 2 years comes down to this 80 minutes in a theater. So it means a lot whether people are going to even forget about liking or disliking it. They're just going to have some sort of reaction to it. So I think everyone that was involved is probably just sitting there, chewing their nails. Oh my God, like, what are people going to think? And as soon as you get a few minutes into it, I'm like, yes, like we're 3 minutes in, but everyone's laughing. They're already cheering for a certain thing. So it's like, okay, like we did something right.
Yeah.
And from that point on, it doesn't matter if the general public loves it or hates it. It's at least this target group of people. That's enough to just reaffirm to me that some people are going to like this, and everyone can think what they want of it. At least we made something awesome.
Yeah, I yeah, exactly. I've been to enough premieres where I've had that same sensation where all I'm focusing on, especially when you've been involved with the project as long as you guys have, you know what it's all about. So you're not really cared about what's on screen. All you care about is what are these people thinking?
Mhm.
right? So that's all you're waiting for is that reaction. So yeah, it's really nice when you get that sense of what you were looking for.
I wasn't stressed at all. I was sitting there with my White Claw reclining, and I was like, I knew as soon as people walked in the door, I was like, people are gonna love this. They're all here to support us. They're all like, they all know somebody who's a part of it or whatever. Like, I got the vibes from the very beginning. I was like, they're gonna lose their minds. Like, they're gonna love this so much, and they did. So I wasn't worried. Not one bit.
There you go.
Yeah, I knew.
And so what's your offset?
Well, my favorite, I guess, when I left and changed into Mildred Moyer, and when the doors opened up and everybody filed out and they were like, oh, haha, like, hi. I really liked that. I really liked Hudson Grace. She plays Lacey Wash. She plays Dr. Wash's daughter, and I don't know, her and I have like this like connection or whatever whenever we work together on set. And so she was so excited to see me as Mildred Moyer. And so she got a picture with me beforehand. She got a picture with me as Elizabeth Chamberlain. And then she got a picture with me as Mildred Moyer after, and autographs and stuff like that. And I don't know, just to see somebody so young, like really kind of look up to me in like kind of a weird role, maybe for kids, but that's okay. And us like connect on that level. I really liked that. I made a lot of connections with people that night, and they all like stood out to me in that way. So yeah, that's what I liked so much. It's just like that we had this like mutual connection, me and Hudson and me and a bunch of other people afterwards, after the film. They're like, we know you better now, you know, like we know each other well and whatever. So that was the coolest part for me.
Nice.
I guess one more cool thing too that happened is like after the first show, like everyone was just so excited. Of course, you know, everyone's giving you praise and all this other stuff. Of course, everyone was just, you know, I want to be back for the next one. I want to do, and you know, everyone that wasn't involved, I want to be part of the next one. And you know, you could shoot at my house. I own a farm if you want to be shooting. And everyone's offering all the stuff. We even had people offering us money. So much of the fact that by the end of that premiere, I was like, we almost have enough to do another movie now, of people just saying that they could chip in some money. So I was like, well, let's do it. So we already started shooting a next horror movie that we're doing called Horror Show. So it's kind of good that we just get people that love something so much that they're just willing to help get the next one made.
Yeah, and that doesn't happen very often, so kudos.
Thank you.
And one last question again for both of you. If you could show this or have one person that's in the film industry see this, you know, whether it be like say Spielberg or Carpenter, who would it be?
Yikes, that's hard to say. I might even go like Quentin Tarantino, because he's actually the one that back in the day when I was in high school, you know, Pulp Fiction kind of time, he was the one that inspired me to become a filmmaker. And I've kind of grown away from him, to be honest. I'm not as big of a fan of his newer stuff, but I'm glad lots of other people are. But he's still inspiring to me, and I still just love his story of how he started. And he's just so passionate about movies. And I saw him talking about old slasher movies the other day, and he knows everything about every single one of them. He just loves everything. He's just very, very passionate about it. So I think he would be forgiving the fact that, you know, our movies pale in comparison to his budget-wise. I think if he just like, look, this is what we made it with, I think he would just have some honest opinions and would just generally be an exciting guy to watch it with.
Yeah, I could see that for sure.
Yeah, I second that 100%. I think that would be really cool.
Tarantino.
Yeah.
All the way through. All right.
All the way through. Yeah.
I'll mail him a DVD copy.
Yeah, we better get on that.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Well, you never know. I mean, yeah, I'm sure he gets a ton of that kind of stuff, but only takes one time to get it through there. All right, guys. Well, I think we'll kind of wrap it up there. I wanted to thank you guys again. I will stop recording here in a second, but once I'm done, if you can just hang around for a couple more minutes afterwards, that'd be great.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much, and congrats on the success.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And hopefully it continues. All right. Good night.